bring on some new blood. So this will be my last meeting. I want to thank the planning staff for its incredible professionalism and talent under the leadership of the planning director, Brad Glass. They've always stepped up to the plate. They've always given us as much detail as they can. They've given us all of the ins and outs and ups and downs of every project, some of them quite complicated, but they were always there to answer the questions, to keep us focused, and to make sure that good planning principles were followed. And I also want to thank the planning board and its members, of course, my colleagues here, for their diligence and their preparedness and adhering to good planning principles as well, and balancing off the overall needs of the city with the needs of the individual neighborhoods and the concerns of those neighborhoods. Each and every one of you brings a special and unique talent. And I must say that I can't have imagined a better group of colleagues where each of you really not only participates, but is always prepared and always comes up with the right questions, the right concerns, and the right answers. So thank you very much. I leave the board in very good hands. We have both a hearing for project and the meeting. So this will first be a hearing. And the first thing I want to do is, as we always do, is to lay out the rules of procedure. For the rules of procedure, we will first begin with a presentation, which will be 10 minutes by the applicant, unless we've seen the project in the past. That would be 6 minutes. The board then will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicants, and then after that, there will be public comments. As you know from the rules of procedure of all the boards and commissions in the city, one has to sign up in advance before the meeting, and we really encourage everybody to send the planning staff letters making your concerns or interests support known, so that we have a public record that everybody, the planning staff, the board, and the public can look at any time. After the public comments, the planning staff will give its presentation and its recommendations. After that, the applicant, if there's any new information that might come out, or some mistakes or concerns, the applicant can clarify that in a couple of minutes. The members of the public are given 3 minutes to speak. If there is a common council member who wants to speak because they represent in the larger areas, they will have 6 minutes to speak. Jasleen will have a timer, and she will also inform you when you have fewer than 30 seconds to finish your comments. Again, we definitely encourage people to write letters so that they're in public record as well. So the first item on the agenda, this is the public hearing, is 50 Beaver Street. And this is a project that is its first appearance. And the applicant is the Nurses Field College Charter High School, the Capital Region. Representative is Jim Graham. And this is a proposal to allow a school to occupy an approximately 63,000 square foot building at the site at 50 Beaver in a downtown mixed use district.
Mr. Chairman, Daniel Hirschberg, I'm here helping Jim Graham, the architect, and he'll take over when we get to the building. I just want to go over some of the information we provided. We're proposed to occupy the complete building, and some of the area is actually a parking beneath it, which will be available to the nurses school, the nurses middle college. This is an outline of the Charter Management Corporation. Lead applicant is Dr. Brenda Robinson, who's here, and the lead organization is the Black Nurses Coalition. And the board chair for this group is Susan Burkhead, who is also here. And the target community of this school is the Capital Region, primarily Albany, Troy, Schenectady, and Waterloo school districts, primarily because 72% of the disadvantaged students they're looking to serve come from those communities. Next. And the mission is here. I don't think I want to read it all, but it's pretty clear that the mission is an innovative high school experience that the students go through and they get a capability of excelling in nursing and allied health professions. And the curriculum obviously will meet the New York State standards, and they go beyond that. They have specific standards that they set up for themselves. Next, this is the growth. Like a lot of charter schools we've done before in the city, it starts out with the first year. So the first year one, will only be the 9th grade. Year 2 will have 2 grades, 9th and 10th. Year 3 will have 3 grades, and year 4, all 4 grades, and year 5, all 4 grades. And there's a little growth taking place between some of the years, and that's an awareness of the fact is they think the demand for this education is very high. They've gotten good responses from people who are interested in already sending their children, even though they can't come yet because we still go through the process. Next. As I said, most of the school growth will come from Albany, Troy, Schenectady, and Waterloo. This is somewhat important because from a transportation standpoint, these communities use CDTA passes. Consequently, they have a way to get to school conveniently. Not so convenient for some people have to change buses, but again, they can all get to school that way. Consequently, they don't have to deal very much with drop-offs or pickups by parents. That's one reason why it's important to understand what's going on with the operation of the school. They do have capabilities of dealing with other issues, and are laid out there. And I think eventually the economic disadvantaged students are the goal here, and they'll have that capability. If they exceed the number of people applying that they don't have space for, they'll have a lottery to fill those spots. Next. I'm going to let, this comes from the 2030 comprehensive plan, and we hit some of the goals in the comprehensive plans. We talked about educational needs, and we think the economic diversity and social areas have all been identified there, and this project certainly meets both that economy, diversity, and social. It meets the needs of people that could not afford to send their kids to a school for pay, and no student will have to pay to come to the school. And diversity in social areas are definitely covered within the curriculum. Next. These are the front building view and the view down along Beaver Street, and that's the front entrance of the building. There's not very much to show. Quite often we do buildings, we show all around it. This building doesn't have an awful lot of around. It's at the front. Next. I'm going to turn it over to Jim Graham, who'll talk about the land.
So my first comment is going to be to debate 10. I think there is a lot around the building, just there's not a lot on this property. So, being a mixed use zone downtown, it's a very vibrant location, a great location for the school. In the first year, we'll occupy 2 floors, being the second and third floor, and access lobby and parking on the ground floor. The second floor is primarily the operational offices and administration offices of the school and classrooms. First year is about 6 classrooms, and the space on the 2 floors slightly exceeds that. Coming to so this is the 3rd floor. And then coming to a full build out in year 4 would be all of the floors of the building, including 4th, 5th, and 6th. And so typical of a high school, we have classrooms, some larger science spaces, as well as assembly spaces such as cafeterias and media spaces.
I don't know, I think that's the end of the slide.
It is.
Okay, we haven't used up our 10 minutes, but again, we're okay with that. If you folks are okay with it, I'll open it up to close the comments.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board?
Al, just a question about the drop off of the students. Traffic.
They'll be arriving by CDK buses. CDK buses don't stop down Beaver Street. They'll stop at a corner. Probably most people get off at the corner of State and Pearl and have to walk that distance to the school. If somebody drops off, they'll contend with exactly what everybody else does there. They'll either pull in front of the building if there's a space. If not, they will double park long enough to let the person out of the car and then go on. There won't be any need for parking. The parking underneath the building will be for the use of staff. So we don't want parents pulling in there and taking those spaces. Those are meant for staff.
Along those lines of parking, is there enough space in the building for the staff parking?
At the 4th year, no. First and second year, maybe it's close, but the 3rd and 4th year, no, there's not enough spots, but there are other parking spaces available that can be made available to the staff, most for pay.
Will students have to pay for their CDK trips, or is that going to be?
Now, the school district is obligated to pay for them to travel to school. School districts that don't have CDTA would actually have to provide a vehicle to take them there. So if students applies and maybe gets there from Westerville or Gilman or Bern, someplace like that, they'll come in on probably a station wagon or a small van or a small bus from those areas. They sometimes travel to 2 or 3 different schools. There might be 1 or 2 students enrolled at different schools, and those will have to drop the students off.
Chris?
Who made you pick this location?
I like Jim's been involved for a few years looking for a location.
So the selection is very challenging because most buildings are not suited for schools unless they're previously schools. Right? So a number of structures were not available, or parochial schools and such were not available, and the school was really looking to be downtown because of their connection with other institutions and healthcare organizations that were looking to be in the downtown. So you have an office stock that is very challenging compared to a school from a building code standpoint. And this one really checked all the boxes and was not only a great location, but also enabled the occupancy with limited work.
Charter schools that have developed in the city before, developed in buildings. But this one, I would imagine, will have significantly more expense because of the equipment and the laboratories. So how is that being funded?
So can we invite somebody to?
Sure.
To answer that, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Pamela McHugh. I'm a registered nurse and I'm affiliated on the Nurses Middle College Network of Schools. So we're a high school and our students take college credits and they do internship in healthcare organizations. So most of the sophisticated labs will be done on the college campuses and in our healthcare practice partners.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments by the board? Okay. We have one speaker.
We have 30 minutes, you say? It's like the Congress here. At least they get 5 minutes. My name is David Swayway. I am the general partner of an entity, PS Associates, which is located across the street from 50 Beaver Street. And I must start off by saying I'm not anti-schools, and I'm not anti-charter schools especially. I'm in favor of them. But there's an unfortunate situation here that's controlled by the New York State Liquor Authority. Our building across the street from this building, let me back up, the SLA has a rule in statute that a bar cannot be located within 200 feet of a school or a church. The entrance to our restaurant bar facility is about 100 feet. So it's not even close. It's, yeah, right. So my objection, unfortunately, we have a facility that's had a liquor license for off and on with different operators for 37 years. And we're in the midst of some negotiations at the moment with several potential tenants, restaurants, and any person that's going to enter into a lease for this facility is going to make it conditional upon getting a liquor license. So it's unfortunate. This is the wrong, for us, it's the wrong location for the school. And it would have a significant negative impact financially for us. You know, especially, it's a restaurant currently is a completely outfitted with total, you know, facilities for a restaurant and bar operation, we would have a significant loss if we could not put a restaurant in that facility. And that facility has cost us over this 37 years to build it out and to prepare it for lease, almost $1 million. So it would have a significant impact to us. So, and the building itself, forgetting the school, still has, it's an office space, and you know, this proposal is for, you know, a conditional use permit. So I'm objecting to that, and the space is still there. It's the owner of the building is not going to take a loss. He still has the space that's in perfect condition, that's rentable.
Sir, your
So,
time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Okay, staff, can you give a report?
This would be a type 2, seeker action. The Albany County Planning Board has provided some recommendations. As the applicant stated, the proposed use would be to serve students from grades 9 to 12. They are phasing they're phasing how many students come in and the renovation of the building. The interior renovations of the 6th floor will take place over a span of 4 years. The existing ground floor parking lot will be utilized. There is an additional parking lot behind the building. Additional information pertaining to the transportation of students is required. The applicant mentioned CDTA, some documentation would be helpful. We're also awaiting responses on interdepartmental review of the application from other departments. And included here is the 200-foot rule per the SLA that the speaker just commented on.
What I understand though, is this correct that existing properties were grandfathered in?
Correct. So
Could you explain that in more detail so that the audience and Mr. Swain understands that part of the rule?
yes, so a part of that 200-foot rule is if you already have a liquor license, you are sort of grandfathered in and are able to continue to function as a bar restaurant. You can also transfer that license to a new business. So that's part of the 200-foot rule. It also speaks to the measurement. So you'd be measuring from the center of where the entrance is. Our belief is that there might be another entrance at the location that the speaker was speaking to that would be beyond that 200 feet.
But to get more specific, does that mean that the school can develop because the bar restaurant is grandfathered in, as well as, I guess, the bar in the MVP center? Or does that mean that the grandfather means that the bar and restaurant can exist, but it still has a problem, that there's still with the law, a problem with the school locating there?
I don't believe there is a problem. I believe the bar would be able to continue to be the use bar restaurant within 200 feet of the school. I'll let Avi also add to that.
Mr. Chairman, the owner of the building has retained Andy Brick, an attorney to review this issue. If you want to hear from him, he can give you the.
Yes,
Yeah,
because it was making me uncomfortable.
yeah, I think let all the first speak. And then-
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I was just gonna say, as far as I'm aware, just from the state liquor license webpage, I don't believe there's an active license there. So it wouldn't be grandfathered if there's not an active license right now. I believe what was in place is currently inactive.
Hi, good evening. Andy Brick from the Brick Law Firm on behalf of the property owner as well as the applicant in support of the application. I was obtained by the property owner to address the issue of the 200-foot rule. And the 200-foot rule does prohibit issuance of a liquor license within 200 feet of the school. It does not prohibit renewal of a liquor license. So to the extent that there are any liquor licenses in the area within 200 feet, they would be grandfathered in and they would receive a renewal. It's my understanding that the existing property, the Dale Miller Restaurant, does not currently have a liquor license, so they would not be entitled to that grandfathering under an existing. The 200-foot rule is measured from door to door. So the simple solution here is the property that the gentleman just spoke of that he owns is at 30 Pearl Street. They have 300 feet of frontage along Beaver. They have 300 feet of frontage along Norton on the other side. They have over 100 feet of frontage along South Pearl. In his very letter, he admits that they have a doorway on South Pearl. I believe that's the doorway that Jasmine mentioned that is more than 200 feet away. The solution here is to just utilize a different access point to that property that's more than 200 feet away. The solution isn't to hold up the school or consider prohibiting the school. We're coming in for a conditional use permit. You can't make your decision on a conditional use permit based upon the speculative plans of an adjoining neighbor. If that's the case, a school couldn't go anywhere because any neighbor with a door within 200 feet could say, I may want to put a bar here. I want to get a license someday. So your determination on a conditional use permit has to be based upon the merits of the application. It's an allowable use in the zone. In fact, schools are an allowable use in every single zone in the city except the industrial zones. And the reason for that is in New York, it's well established that a school use and educational use is a matter of public policy. It is a presumptively beneficial use. As a matter of public policy, it's presumed to be beneficial. Factors bearing on the public health, safety, and welfare, such as traffic and other issues and liquor license availability, in those instances, they are not sufficient under New York State case law to deny a conditional use permit for an educational use. So you have to look at the educational use as a presumptively beneficial use. And based upon that presumption, if there are concerns about its location, this board has an obligation to determine reasonable conditions to ameliorate any negative impacts. The only impact that we've identified, that has been identified as potentially negative is this 200-foot rule. Well, the applicant has the ability to utilize another door, so that solves it. And it's not something that should hold up the educational use as a result of that. But the only negative financial impact that would be occurring to them is the cost to change the door to get to the restaurant. It's not going to prohibit a liquor license. They have other doors, they have other opportunities. And that, even that concern isn't sufficient to overcome the presumptive beneficial use of the educational use at this location. So I thank you for the opportunity and answer any questions you have about that.
Thank you very much. The
So-
attorney on our board.
Yeah, we're speaking those language. So what you're saying is, so there's a couple of questions that I have.
Mhm.
The first question is, and I think you've answered it, but I just want to confirm. If there's a liquor license there at the time that the school starts its operations, that is got grandfathered and therefore exempt from this 200-foot rule.
No question.
However, if the business, because the business has been here for 37 years, I'm sure it's changed hands because the liquor license follows the business, not the building. So if that business moves, goes to funk, whatever, that means that any business that operator gets in there after that is not subject to the grandfather rule.
That's my understanding.
Okay. So we're
Alcohol
both on the
beverage
same
control
page there.
64A.
Yeah, so we're both on the same page there. So then what you're saying is, if they want to continue operating their business differently from the way they've been operating it for the past 37 years, or similarly, or the same, my apologies, that they would have to bear the expense of relocating their entrance.
That's correct. Whatever that expense was, I don't know what it is, but it would be, if they don't have a liquor license now and they want to obtain one after the school is existing and operational, and I would point out the school is not existing and operational yet.
Right.
But when it does become an existing use across the street and they want a liquor license, they would have to, when they submit to the SLA, they would have to show a doorway, a primary entrance to that facility that was more than 200 feet from the school's primary entrance. Which I would submit on a
then the question
3/4
that I
acre
have
property they
here-
can do.
The question that I have, because it's the school that wants to move there, because the school is, and I'm not against the school at all, I'm not saying that. I agree with you as far as the purpose and public policy, so on and so forth. At the same time, it's also being a good neighbor. So, and so you want to go there, you want to have the school there, then my question is there another entrance that the school can use? So the business owner doesn't have to bear such an expense, because I'm not familiar with the properties, but in looking at the landscape, those are bricks, which requires masonry. It's not the stuff that being built now, where you can just close up, put drywall and move on.
Right.
This is this is a huge, it may seem minimal in the grand scheme, but it's still a huge task that you're putting on someone who had no, who may or may not be in a position to make that task. And so in essence, you're putting them in a position where they have to choose whether or not they continue to be in business.
Sure.
That's a lot. And so the question is, can the school use a different door? Is there a different way of ingress or egress that can sort of alleviate that issue?
And so my understanding, and I'm going to defer to our architects is here, it's, the way the building is built, it's a first floor garage with a core lobby. And so the only door is into the core, everything else is parking lot. That's about the extent of my architectural knowledge. Yes,
That's correct, yes. So the door to the school cannot be moved more than a few feet along that front wall of Beaver Street.
Okay.
But I will
And
mention,
actually,
though, that I am very familiar with that block, and I'm very familiar with the building. There is an entrance that can be used by the other building, by the bar, if they have to relocate the entrance that already exists,
Oh, okay.
that you can go
Okay.
in from South Grove
Grove
Street.
Street, so there's no expense there, okay.
In fact,
Okay,
I've attended events when that restaurant was active, and almost everybody went in the front entrance off of South Pearl into that building.
so then the question is, so is the South Pearl entrance the main entrance? I think the building owner should be able to answer some of these
The
questions.
South
too.
Pearl entrance is the entrance that for the entire building with all of the stuff in the building.
Okay,
Where the Beaver Street entrance was a dedicated entrance for
the
the
bar.
restaurant.
Yeah, that's correct, that's correct, but
So is there an entrance from the core place to the restaurant from
Absolutely.
there? So it's
And you used the word primary entrance. I don't know if there meant that there could be a secondary entrance.
the SA, the regulation 20-foot rule, SLA will look to the primary entrance, the main entrance for both the restaurant as well as the school. The main secondary entrances, fire exits don't count. So if the two main entrances can be moved 201 feet apart, this is a non-issue.
So it wouldn't be a physical configuration of the building, but rather an operational configuration of the ingress and egress from the building.
I can't speak to South Pearl Street across the street, but yeah, if they entered the restaurant through South Pearl Street, I believe that's, and Jasmine said as well, I believe that's more than 200 feet away, it's a non-issue.
That makes it a little bit different. Okay.
okay.
No, it's not, but I just wanted to be clear.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks so much for the discussion.
Sure.
Very good.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm usually here with kind of boring stuff like, retail and apartments, so to be representing this application is pretty exciting for me. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Now, one more, and this is it's not a lawyer question, this is probably for the nurse group that is here. What certs, what the nurse would you go through? Are we CNA, HHA, are we LPN, RN, what are we talking?
Yeah. I'm Susan Burkhead, I'm the chair of the board. This is not a licensure qualifying program. This is a college prep program. The students will earn a CNA or a EMT while they're in school, but they will not be nurses when they graduate. We like to say they will be nursing school ready, or health profession school ready, or just college ready. We can't make them go to nursing school when they finish. We hope they will. We hope they'll be well-educated consumers of healthcare, if nothing else. So, but prepared for college in any event. Okay.
I have a ton of questions, but it's not a problem.
Well, we can have plenty of questions another time. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Okay. Our recommended action, of course, today is nothing. This is the first review, so the board will be seeing this again. And there's a number of interdepartmental reviews that have to occur. So we'll move on to the next project and call the public hearing to close and open for the regular board meeting. And the project next on the agenda is 897 Broadway. The representative agent is Rushberg. And this is a proposal for mixed use project in the warehouse form-based district. And the proposal is to demolish a approximately 6,500 square foot portion of the building to accommodate a surface parking lot of 17 spaces. And action today is determination of secret significance of demolition review and development plan review as well.
Yes.
Yeah, development plan review. This is a project we've seen before. I think at least once, and also some of us have visited the site with the representative.
Dan Hertzberg, this project is actually under,
Okay, we haven't, just for the record, we haven't seen this
I don't.
officially before on the board meeting. Okay, sorry, Mr. Hertzberg.
Projects being represented by Nicholas Daniels, a first engineer, a new partner for Hertzberg and Hertzberg. I'm gonna let Nick handle this.
Thank you, Nick Daniels, Hirschberg and Hirschberg. This is demolition of a 6,500 plus or minus square feet of existing portion of the building, and we're going to propose to expand this existing parking lot by 17 spaces. Next slide, please. So the existing building, it's right next door to World Wolf's Beer Garden, right on Broadway, across the street from the Copper Crow. In the bottom right, the project location. On that existing building, you can slightly see a dividing line. The building abuts Wolf's Beer Garden, but that dividing line, somewhere along the history of the building, there was a new garage that was constructed. This garage, their interior wall is actually the outside wall of that building next to Wolf's. So if you go, so some of you who went and walked the property on the inside noticed that there is no connection to that wall. So this existing garage is what we're proposing to demolish. Next slide, please. The owner looked at rehabilitating the existing garage, but unfortunately, as we'll see in the next couple of slides, the extent of damage that there is to the masonry and roofing. And consistent with what the code requires is that we'll salvage majority of the material from landfills. Next slide, please. Yep, so on the left there's some damage to the roof. It's consistent throughout. The same up the exterior, the masonry is falling apart. You have an entire structural report that can be provided if requested. And that further details the extent of damage to the exterior. Next slide, please. Just some more interior photos that show the extent of cracking within the masonry on the inside. And it's consistent along the exterior walls as well. And that just further identifies the extent of the building that we're proposing to demolish. So with this new site plan, we're proposing is 17 additional parking spaces. The goal is to have this parking lot function with the neighboring parking lot. The reasoning for this is we want this to be a functioning 2-lane parking lot. So when a vehicle comes off Broadway, they have the ability to turn around within this parking lot and exit out on Broadway. Originally, cars with the existing parking lot now, they don't have enough room it's very tight to maneuver within that parking lot. So they go through the alley. But given the current condition of the alley, we would prefer to see cars exit out on Broadway. From a legal standpoint, we are going to propose a easement for ingress and egress for 897 Broadway with that adjoining parking lot. And Another item is that the parking spaces on the neighboring lot, when this 897 building will be open, the spaces on the adjoining lot will be available for use of that building. The owner of 897 Broadway and the neighboring building, it's the same owner. So he's putting that in a contract to have that availability for the parking. Next slide, please. Yep, so I just previously mentioned the ingress to egress easement, and parking will be available for 897 use. And also to maximize the amount of parking spaces we can provide, the owner is willing to haul the snow offsite to an offsite location, just so we can maximize the amount of parking spaces. We have received comments back from planning. There's a number of waivers that we'll be seeking to obtain. We believe that a lot of them can be obtained. So we don't see any issues with that. And I believe that's the last slide, so I can open any questions that you may have.
Okay. Does the board have any questions or comments?
Yeah, just one question. I'm a little concerned about the warehouse district suddenly becoming,
Right.
filled with more parking lots than maybe is out there. Any landscaping or anything else that buffers?
Yep, so, Jasmine, can you go back to the site plan, please? Right adjoining to that proposed handicap space, we provided some shrubs there for screening of that new parking lot. And it's also within the code to provide some street trees, so we'll be providing some street trees as well, as long as some bike racks along the street and some other possible street furniture as well.
Do we have any elevations to show? Okay, I just wanted to mention to the board, I had initially been against tearing this structure down, but there's two things that convinced me. The first one is that this isn't really a building that's attached to the building that they have the bar and restaurant is. It's actually sitting there separate. It's being held up by a bunch of I-beams. The only place that's really attached to the existing building is the roof flashing against the neighboring roof. The second thing is that I was concerned about the continuity of the facade and how it reads on the street. And when I looked at it, there's a door and a window within a large garage door, so it kind of negates what would be a smooth look at even if the facade could be saved. It doesn't make sense because about half the front is occupied by this very large garage door. So just so that the planning board knows that, and of course, you can go and take a look at it yourself. Any other questions? Chris?
To be clear, so that, I mean, I'm looking at this on Google Maps. It's Wolf Beer Garden in it's the entirety of what looks like a one-story.
Yep.
That's knocked down, the whole thing.
No, only a portion of that building will be knocked down. A portion from the parking lot, if you continue down Wolf's toward 9th and you have that parking lot that's right there between the office building. It's a portion of that building next to Wolf's, starting from the parking lot, heading back toward Wolf's. It's
But not the entirety.
not the entirety.
The chairman described it properly. It's like an add-on to the existing building. It was meant to expand the building and put an enclosed space in, so we're demolishing all of a one-story building that's in addition to an existing one-story building, but not the rest of it.
It must be the stuff with the white windows and white door.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's gone.
That piece there.
Oh, there we go.
All right. The lot, is that for public use, for, it looks like residential to the north?
So that's currently an office building. It's currently used for the tenants or the employees of that office space now.
Copy.
So the goal is that the owner who owns the office building is also the owner of this new building here.
Gotcha.
So he's trying to share the parking just so that both businesses, or the 897 Broadway has enough parking during their peak hours.
So it's not public parking.
No, it's not.
Further questions? Okay, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Okay.
My apologies, I'm just trying to get your screen back. Okay, so this would be a seeker unlisted action. The Albany County Planning Board has provided a recommendation on the demolition application, but we have not referred the development plan review application to them yet. So that would be coming up April 10th. The interdepartmental review comments have been provided to the applicant, like they said, and so have the development review comments. Also, just for the record, we'd like to state that although the addition may be of the age that is deemed historic, the removal of the later addition does not result in or impact the historic significance of the primary structure. The demolition of the later addition may not have an adverse impact on the integrity of the district and the potential listing of on the National Registry. We have our recommended actions.
Okay, questions to the staff? Okay, hearing none. We do have two recommended actions. And first of all, the development plan review will be deferred.
Correct.
But the Albany County Planning Board recommendations in the departmental review still are needed. So the first item that is being proposed is to recommend negative declaration on the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Do I have a motion? Moved by Martin Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Melissa Guillard. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 It passes unanimously. The second recommendation is to approve the demolition with these conditions, and I'll read the conditions for the record. The first is that the demolition shall be limited to the 6,455 square foot portion of the building that's specified. The second is that any repair as a result of the proposed demolition should be in kind and sympathetic to the historic material. The third is that prior to the proposed demolition, the applicant has to submit elevation drawings for the proposed rehab of the exterior wall of the remaining building, which is of course the north wall of the building to the south. And that will be approved by the planning department's historic preservationist. And then the fourth condition is that the applicant shall obtain approvals for the proposed parking area and commence construction within 6 months of the development plan review approval. And if not, the applicant will return to the board to discuss an interim plan. Do I have a motion? I will put a motion on the floor. I can do that. Is there a
Second.
Second. Too late, Ron. Roman, you're so funny there. It's that time delay. Okay, further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. That's a unanimous vote, and we look forward to the development. The next item on the agenda is 102 Hackett Boulevard. Once again, Mr. Hirschberg is here working very hard.
I get paid regularly, even if I sit with him.
And this is in a mixed-use neighborhood edge development on at 102 Hackett Boulevard. And the action under consideration is State Environmental Quality Review Act and determination of significance. This is the first time we've seen this project. You're probably all familiar with it. It is right now the headquarters of the union that represents correction officers. It's the one with that kind of large sign that flashes all kinds of stuff. And they're moving apparently, and the proposal here is to turn this into apartments. Mr. Hirschberg.
Nick Daniels for Hirschberg, and Hirschberg is going to take it over.
Okay, Mr. Daniels.
Thank you. As Chris mentioned, it's the existing Scopa building, and the goal is here to convert this into 25 dwelling unit apartments. Located around Hackett Boulevard, across the street is the Albany Academy School for Girls, and further down the street is Albany Academy School for Boys. It's in the MU neighborhood edge district. Next slide, please. Existing conditions plan. There's the existing building, surrounding properties. There's ample parking within the site. I will note that the egress on the right side of the page that does cross 94 Hackett Boulevard. We do have some existing language to add to these plans moving forward of ingress and egress, and we're working on providing further language on the existing parking spaces that exist within 94 Hackett. As far as the site plan, the goal here is to not add or change the existing conditions very significantly. We are providing some new street trees along the street. We worked with the city forester to provide the correct species. As far as parking goes, we have ample parking. So the goal here is to try to keep as many as possible, but if need be, we can work with losing some spaces if needed. There's existing lighting within the site. There's many wall packs within the buildings. There's a couple light poles in there. Moving forward, we'll provide some new lighting plans showing you downward lighting, just to analyze the site, make sure we're not, shining any light within the neighbors' properties. Next slide, please. And also as part of the residential use here, we provide some outdoor recreation spaces, picnic tables, grills, garden beds, and also there's an indoor fitness area inside the building. So ideally, the goal here is to keep the existing site as pretty much existing as is, and just try to add some new features to accommodate the residential use. And I believe that's the last slide, so I can open any questions we have.
Okay, questions from the board?
Will the driveways remain the same, or did you mention that?
So when we received some comments back from planning, we would like to keep the driveways, the existing dimensions as is. So that's the waiver we'll be requesting. Currently, it is used as a one-way in, one-way out. So we have no problem keeping it that way. We would like to keep it that way, possibly add some signage just for further direction so people can not make the wrong turn. But yes, we would like to keep it as is.
There's no conflict with the next driveway being so relatively close.
No, we don't believe so. There's enough separation for the next driveway, so we don't see any issues there.
That's the podiatrist office, and again, they have the normal traffic that the doctors have, but it's not peaky. It doesn't occur all in one storm a day. It's not like an office building or something like this was an office building, so it had more defined peaks and use. So I think it works out well.
I'm assuming one of the requirements is going to be some kind of signalization to get residents across the street to the parking area that's across Hackett Boulevard.
So we're not intending to use that parking area across the street. We believe we have ample parking within the site. Unfortunately, on this plan right now, there's a crosswalk that is shown at the bottom of the steps there on Hackett Boulevard. So we do have some access directly there. It's just not currently shown in plans.
Is there
You gotta walk to the corner.
Yeah, it looks like there's enough parking for guests too.
Yeah, the on-site parking is sufficient for our needs. Consequently, there's no need to use that parking lot, which is across the street. And is owned by Albany Academies, I believe. And we're not certain whether or not it might be more beneficial to maybe take out the steps, not encourage anybody to drive that way, but meanwhile, the steps are access down the hill to get to Hackett Boulevard rather than walking the driveway.
I'm assuming also that the little space there on the very, what would be the west edge of the parking between the neighboring building and this building, I think, if I remember right, there's a barrier there or a rise so that the parking on the site that you're proposing won't spill over into the other parking. Is that right?
No, for the podiatrist next door.
Yeah.
No, there was actually a fence there.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what I thought
Oh,
was a
yep,
barrier.
there is a fence there,
Yeah,
yes.
the end of the parking lot is the fence.
Further questions? Okay, is there anybody to speak? Okay. All right, then we'll move to the staff recommendations, and again, we're only looking at secret today.
So this is an unlisted action. We have received comments or recommendations from the Albany County Planning Board. We are awaiting some responses from the other departments for their review. As the applicant stated, there's an existing parking lot that includes 51 spaces that would be utilized. There's a new water service that is being proposed to accommodate for the change of use. Departmental comments have been shared with the applicant. And it seems like they'll be submitting updated plans. Per the code for a dwelling multi-unit use, they would have to provide any multi-unit dwelling containing more than 20 units should include outdoor and indoor passive or active recreation spaces that total at least 60% of the site area, which it seems that they're proposing. We have recommended action.
Okay. Any comments to the staff, questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for the declaration on the state of final quality review act.
Second.
Moved by Chris, moved by Martin Hall and seconded by Chris Ellis. Further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the final item on the agenda is the Armory site redevelopment, which is at 64 Colburn Avenue and 944 Central Avenue. The applicant is Albany Realty Partners. Representing agent is Hirschberg and Hirschberg. And this is a zoning in a mixed-use community urban setting. And the proposal is to redevelop about 9 acres to include a self-storage facility, a restaurant with associated drive-through and 187 dwelling units in the building, total 220,000 square feet of gross floor area. And a total of about 355 parking spaces. The only action that we are undertaking tonight is the State Environmental Quality Review Act with the proposal to declare the planning board as the lead agency. So we're not taking any action nor taking any testimony on the actual site redevelopment and the proposals on the site tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Andy Brick, who's the attorney for the applicants.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, Andy Brick again from the Brick Law Firm. I represent Albany Realty Partners LLC, who is the new property owner of the Armory Corner. The 8.92 acre, everybody knows is the former Armory Garage. I believe you're familiar with it, the corner of Central and Colvin. Dan is our lead engineer. Also with me this evening is one of the project components, which we'll discuss, representatives of that project component, the Vecino Group. With me this evening is Bruce Adib Yazdi and Jordan Gibson from the Vecino Group. Just
Thank you very much.
So the 8.92 acre parcel is proposed to eventually be developed with 3 separate projects. We are here this evening to begin the process for development plan review for the self-storage, which is going to be in the existing Armory building. It's going to be repurposed and reused for a self-storage facility. Representatives from the storage facility are here. Ms. Ramsey's here as well. I'm looking forward to siting it here at this location in the existing building to reuse and repurpose rather than just demo and do something different. So the application before you this evening is development plan review for the self-storage in the existing building. But we also are in the process of working through plans to bring at some point in the future an application before you for a quick serve restaurant at the corner of Central and Colvin, as well as a 187 unit affordable housing project, workforce housing, that's going to go in the rear southwest corner of the parcel, which will be owned and operated by Vecino Group. They're excited to, they're finalizing their plans, and they will be before you shortly. But in recognizing that we have these 3 potential projects on the table all at the same time, it's clear we can't analyze for seeker purposes, for environmental quality review purposes, each one individually. That would be segmentation of the seeker review process. We go to the next slide. And as you know, segmentation of seeker is frowned upon. If you have knowledge of a set of activities that are going to occur, you need to analyze the potential as a result of all of those activities. And since we are actively engaged in hopefully leasing somebody up to the corner, as well as actively engaged in bringing the affordable housing project in the back, we're aware of that. So rather than come in and try and ask you to just review the seeker impacts for the self-storage, what we thought would be more appropriate is to present to you a seeker package that is a full build analysis. And the full environmental assessment form that was provided to you, as well as the supplemental materials, incorporates all of the potential impacts arising from all 3 projects. Although 2 of them are speculative right now and aren't before you, we think they will be at some point in the future. So we wanted to analyze on a full build basis so we can avoid a claim of segmentation, which isn't permitted. So I'm sure you've reviewed the environmental assessment form. You'll see it's for all 3 projects. Right now, before the application before you, though, is just for the self-storage, because self-storage was the first one in the door. So they got stuck doing the full build analysis for everybody. So I think in the near future, you will see applications for the other 2. But right now, we're asking you to consider the declaring lead agency to be secret lead agency for the self-storage process and the development plan review that's before you this evening. Next slide. And again, those are the 3 different projects: the self-storage in the existing building on 2.7 acres, the multifamily in the house on 3.66, which already has been subdivided. There's been a lot line adjustment, so that 3.66 acre lot currently exists. And then we'd be seeking an additional subdivision to put the quick serve restaurant on 2.5 acres, which would be on the corner of the property. And then the self-storage in the middle of the property in the existing building with shared access points, cross easements and the like, which will further develop as the applications come in before you. But that's why we're here. We're really here for self-storage, but we need to analyze and seek all those other aspects for the full build analysis. And at this point, I turn it over to Dan to walk you through the project itself.
I don't think, given on what we're here for, I would really need to go through the project in great detail. The blue outline, the big sort of L-shaped piece with a big bottom on the L, is actually the quick serve restaurant in the corner, known as 944 Central. The middle building is the existing Armory Garage that everybody has come to love. We worked on that when it was first built, and I said, this is a automobile garage? Yes, it was. And so that's the building that's being converted into self-storage. And we're the engineer for that applicant also. And the third parcel is what's currently known as 64 Colvin Avenue. That is the 187 units of affordable housing, including services for vets. That's a component of that. We're certainly, when we get that application ready, we'll go in detail for what that application has. Meanwhile, we have submitted a detailed application with regard to the 66 Colvin Avenue, which is existing building. I'm sure it hasn't gone through sufficient departmental review yet, but that application should be back in front of you fairly shortly. But we really would like you folks to consider yourself the lead agency for all three projects, the 8.92 acres.
And I would also just add that Vecino Group, who's proposing the housing in the rear, is having an open house tomorrow, an informational session. And they've asked me to invite all of you if you'd like to attend, and as well as any of the public that's watching. It's from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Westgate Diner. So please feel free to stop by if you have any questions or want to learn more about the project.
Questions from the board?
I have a semi-stupid question. What do you classify as a quick serve restaurant? Are you talking about like a McDonald's, like?
It's not a semi-stupid, it's a good question. In reality, the simple answer is fast food has developed a bad connotation. You know, it's not healthy food. So they've switched the name to quick serve restaurant. It's really fun.
So there's an expectation of having a drive-through.
Drive-through, sit down, yes.
Okay.
Could you go back to the site plan? I know that, again, we're just looking on the secret. You have the site plan there. Why is there so much, an enormous amount of parking on the? I mean, you got a so-called quick serve restaurant with a drive-through, and then you have all the parking for the potential proposed apartments over there. Why all that? I mean, that is ridiculous. And again, this is, I guess, for the board to consider, or the staff to consider later on. But what I'm looking at now is this incredible amount of parking that seems never to be utilized. And the one thing we've been trying to do in the city, especially with the Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance, is to keep the damn parking down.
In the final analysis, through less parking, we're already working with Vecino to try to right size that. Because a number, being affordable housing, a number of the people will not have cars, or a group of 2 people living there might only have 1 car rather than 2 cars. So we think that is definitely an oversized parking. It was based upon apartment zoning without taking any credit, what we'd be entitled to for the less parking demand. On the quick serve restaurant, site design being done by another engineer, but I believe that parking is also excessive.
And what we have to do, as you can appreciate, for secret purposes, we have to show you the max bill. We have to show you this, you know, what are the potential environmental impacts from this max bill. We recognize that things such as parking may be substantially reduced by the time we get to the end of this process. But for secret purposes, we got to show the max potential so you can properly analyze it.
Okay, other questions? Okay. I believe we have 2 speakers.
We do, we have common council member Hyde Park.
I would remind that the council representative has 6 minutes. And this testimony has to be exclusively on the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your service on us for this meeting, but really appreciate your countless hours to this board and to the city, so thank you for that. So again, Hyde Clark, Common Council member for the 12th Ward. I will limit these comments to the secret process. First, this application actually already went to the Board of Zoning Appeals in November. That caused myself to question why secret wasn't started at that point. Did write a letter to Mr. Glass and explain that although we didn't have applications for the housing, we didn't have applications for fast food restaurant, that the city really needed to consider all three projects at the same time. So I do appreciate that we got to this point, even if it was a little late in the game. In terms of what type of action, I don't have any objection to the planning board serving as lead agency, but would like to take this time to state that this should be a type 1 action under seeker. You will note in the code and regulations that in a city with a population less than 150,000, we're proposing 200 dwelling units to existing water supply and sewer services. That should be a type 1 action. We don't get up to the 200, but further down in those regulations, it does state that where the proposal is borders and shares a boundary with a park, which this does, is Westland Hills, that limit drops down to 25% of the requirement. So this is a type 1 action under seeker. With that, as a type 1 action, carries the presumption that's likely to have significant adverse impact on the environment. So we'd like the board to consider that as you work through seeker. Also, just to point out some the factors that I would like the board to concentrate on, impacts on flooding. Colvin Ave has an issue with flooding right now, so we need to see improvements to that situation. Impacts to aesthetic resources in the park, impacts on transportation, studies. You have a proposed drive-through, busy corner. We just received an accident log for Colvin and Lincoln today, where it's over 1,000 accidents in the last year and a half, 2 years at that intersection. So we'll be providing that data, which we got from Albany Police. Impacts on energy, impacts on human health, proximity to the school, whether or not it's consistent with a community plan. Colvin Avenue, almost in its entirety, is zoned neighborhood, mixed-use neighborhood center, which carries with it moderate density as well as neighborhood-oriented businesses and services. I think when the USDO was adopted, there was an oversight to zone this MUCU. I think now that the Armory Garage business is being abandoned, the city needs to consider having zoning being consistent and have comparable developments. Neighborhood Association and myself do support a 65 unit affordable housing literally on the other side of the park entrance. So we're talking right next, if both projects are constructed, we're talking about over 250 new units being constructed at once. So that project should also be considered during the secret process. And also the board just has to consider whether or not this is consistent with community character. Do recognize that this is a formal commercial industrial use, but that's not what we're talking about in its entirety at this point. And it's a massive project, and look forward to continued planning board meetings, BZA meetings, and opportunities for not only myself, but neighborhood residents to make comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. I would also mention to the board, if you haven't read the councilman's letter, it's on record in there. It goes through everything pretty substantially. Michael O'Brien.
Also, Al, I'd like to thank you for your service, not just to this board, but also you've got service to the not-for-profits. Thank you to the service agencies for thank you for that also. I am in complete agreement with everything that Councilman Clark has said. Not only did he author a letter, but I believe we received a letter from Westland Hills Little League, and I believe we received a letter from the Upper Washington Avenue Neighborhood Association. And I also agree with that the project, which already received site plan approval on 60, covered by land development should be considered also in the overall impact. That's at least going to total out to more than 250 units. I did receive from police officer today, I received it from police officer Daniel Webster, an accident report for 2021 and 2022, just dealing with Common Avenue, and I'm going to leave this copy with you. And most of the accidents, he actually details on this report, Common Avenue, the accidents were on, and most of them are in the lower area of Common, the area approaching Central Avenue, exactly where this project is going to be, as well as other parts of Common Avenue. And there were 9 people injured in 2021. There were 7 injured and there were numerous accidents. I don't know this with the board, I just had it today. So I also recall the zoning meeting back in November. And I was at the same point as Hyde, we argued that they shouldn't have done the zoning variance without a seeker. We disagreed with, they decided that not only did they decide that same night and precluded any further comments by the neighborhood association contrary to previous instructions, which we had been given about able to submit an answer within a few days after the board hearing. I appreciate the fact that there's been a change of mind and seeker is going to be pursued. And it should be a type 1 action for all the reasons that Hyde has mentioned.
Mr. Ryan, like 30 seconds.
Okay, well, that is basically it. The only other thing I want to mention is a personal note. I have 34 years in military service, most of them with the Army National Guard. And after that, I spent 8 years volunteering in the homeless vets at the Only Housing Coalition. So I am emotionally invested in serving veterans, and I'm not at all consider myself NIMBY, but I don't think that this is a moral project for accomplishing the goals. Veteran services have been spread out. They are supposed to be community-based services, and to put them into 187 or 190 unit building, I don't think is a good model. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Okay, we had a report from the staff.
Yes, the applicant is correct that this is in front of us because of one of 3 applications for the self-storage facility, but in front of us is only the seeker today. We haven't started the review for the development plan review application. It is, and for all the segmentation reasons that the applicant spoke to, this entire site is being reviewed as a whole. It is a type 1 action. No other action associated with the project can be taken until the seeker process is complete. The Albany County Planning Board has also provided recommendations which are included here and was provided to the board. And ultimately, we recommend declaring lead agency as planning board declaring itself as lead agency.
Okay, and you have those recommendations by the county planning board, although I think they're ones that we would normally do anyway. It seems to be repetitive, but you can see it here. Those are the last 2 with they're talking about SWPP and review by DOT, of course, and review by SHPO because they are chronological. So oops, let me get rid of that. Okay, questions to the staff? Hearing none, the recommended action is to have the planning board declare itself the lead agency for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Larissa Guiar. Is there a second?
Se-
Second by Roman.
Roman, you can take it.
Second by Roman Kuchera. Further discussion. All those in favor, then please say aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously. Is there any other business to come before the board?
No.
Okay, if not, I declare this meeting adjourned. I should have a vote on it, though, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second.
Moved by Michael Holman, seconded by Dennis Seguiar. All those in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for the vote.
Thank you.